Looking for something to do, start a game or video playlist instantly, because we need a video playlist while we're talking for a game. It's just like, I don't know if we've talked about this, Scott.
No?
We should kick it off with this.
Sure.
Have we talked about playing games in our Teams meetings yet?
We have not talked about playing games in our Teams meetings. I don't know if you've had a chance to do this at all. Again, back to the whole I see stuff at wonky times things. We've been using this in Teams meetings for a little while now, and some of them are kind of fun. There's some word games in there. There's tic-tac-toe. You can do like a not words kind of thing. It can be kind of engaging to do some of them.
You know what I do? I start a Teams meeting with myself just so I can play Minesweeper.
Minesweeper was one of them. So I have to confess, I was never good at Minesweeper. I just never took the time to learn it or figure it out, and I still don't know how to play it to this day. And now I'm too old for it.
No, you're not too old for it. We're going to have to start a Teams meeting, or in the Teams meeting that we kind of have going on in the background here. And I'm going to teach you how to play Minesweeper. We used to play it as a kid, because it was back Windows 95. I don't know that it was on Windows 3.1, was it? I think it was on 3.1.
It is one of the early OG ones. I can't. I think it is absolutely like an original Windows predating 95 thing, but not 3.0, but 3.1.
Yeah, we had a whole family competition going, like to get the fastest time, and I think my dad would even play it at work sometimes to practice. But we were to the point like
as one does,
the large board. Yeah, and I think our fastest time at like the small board, we were down into the sub 10 seconds time frame to solve the whole game. Part of it was getting the right board layout, because based on where all the mines were, certain ones were easier to win than others, because with the right click, you could almost beat the game with a single click. But yeah, we absolutely had family competitions on who could be the fastest Minesweeper solver.
Gotcha. So this particular capability, I guess, I don't know what I would call it. This particular
ability, distraction.
Yeah, this piece of functionality. So this is called Games for Work. It's been out since November-ish, I believe. At least to kind of the wider world. There's a bunch of different things in there. You mentioned Minesweeper. Wordament is the word one that's there. There's Solitaire, all sorts of those kinds of things. So yeah, they make for good little kind of quick bites for icebreakers. We've done a couple of them, like not competition wise, but like, hey, let's just spin up a game of Wordament and do a couple rounds of this when we end a team meeting or things like that. That's kind of fun. We've also done, because most of us have Game Pass, at least at work, is we've done like little Among Us competitions and just kind of played the multiplayer Among Us, which is kind of fun as well.
Yeah, it's interesting. You just go and add it as a tab to a meeting and pick a game, and people can join it. And it's kind of, again, nifty feature. To your point, it's like icebreaker. I know Sean and I, when we have been on meetings waiting for a client before, it's like, hey, let's spin up a game of Minesweeper or something while we're waiting for people to join the meetings. And
the problem is when other people come into the meeting, they can see the game you're playing, so you do have to. You might have to watch your time in there.
Bill for those first 5 or 10 minutes if they're running a little late.
There you go. I see how it is. Gotcha. Okay, fair enough.
Oh man. So yeah, it's fun. Speaking of games, however we got on that topic.
It was your fault. You took us there. So now that you've taken us through Gameland, where are you going to take us next?
I don't know. Where should we go next? Should we stick on Let's stick on Teams for a minute. Primarily because I got a new Teams device in my office, Scott, that I have been playing with this last week.
Oh yeah? What you got in the office now? I have not tried
playing a game on it yet. So, have you seen the Neat stuff? It's neat dots. I don't want to get their URL wrong. because it's not .com. I think it's neat.no.
I am not familiar with the neat frame. What is this? The neat
frame,
neat
the neat
dot
bar.
frame.
Yeah, so they have this neat bar pro, neat board, neat frame, a neat pad, a neat center. It's all kind of neat. Like they've never heard that joke before. But no, I got a neat frame in my office this past week, and I have a YouTube video, so I recorded like actually unboxing it and setting it all up and all of that. These are Teams Room devices. It's really nifty. So up until now, I just had a speakerphone. I had a Yealink Teams speakerphone in my office, and I would use that to do calls. Nice thing, and I'd like this from a Teams perspective, is if my computer has to reboot, if it crashes, if it needs an update, any of those, I'd like having the phone to be able to make a phone call on. Or have a phone call, reboot my computer at the same time. But the phones, inevitably, they have phone quality sound when you're doing speakerphone, and they have no video. The nice thing about the Neat Frame is it's tall. The dimensions are in there, maybe 15 inches tall, so it is bigger than a frame, but it's vertical, it has a camera in it, it has decent speakers in it, so using that instead of the speakerphone has been what I've been doing all week. Teams phone calls, if you want to do voice, it's nice, you just answer it, you can do voice on it, or voice and video on it. It sounds better, it's louder than a speakerphone. But it also has, because it's a big screen, like it has my calendar up on it all day, so I can kind of look over and actually see usually today's and the next day's calendar on it. I was playing with it. You can even do, because it's a Rooms device, you can do the whiteboard on it. It's a touch screen, so you can do a whiteboard and draw on it, or you can share a PowerPoint presentation, all right on this standalone device.
That's interesting. Can you use it as a monitor too? Because it's a 15.6-inch FHD display.
Yeah, you cannot use it as a monitor. So they do have that. Like, people have asked in their FAQ, can you do this as like a secondary monitor? And it doesn't work as a monitor. So it is just kind of a standalone unit. So it is, yeah, it's like a standalone video speakerphone kiosk type device. It is a little pricey if you're just doing it as a speakerphone in your office.
A little bit. So I clicked the buy button just to see, like, ooh, they have this on here, and you select whether you're doing Zoom Rooms or Microsoft Teams. And the Microsoft Teams platform full purchase price is USD $2,480 per device.
Per device.
Wow. That's a that's dedication right there to really want to hold a Teams meeting that much.
And I think it's designed, again, it's more of the Teams room. Like, if you have a conference room and it's a shared conference room and people can just walk in there and make phone calls and want to do video phone calls, or maybe like a hot desk type scenario, I think it's geared probably a little bit more towards like small conference rooms, that type of stuff. And it has some intelligence built in for that. So it has a wider angle, but if it sees two people in the shot, it can actually like zoom in on both of them and chop out the gap between them and bring two people onto the same call in like a split screen, but just using a single camera. It even has some configuration where you can set like where it's going to focus in terms of depth of field or width of field, so that if you're in an office and people are walking behind you, it's not doing face tracking on them, because it also tracks similar to how like the Instalink camera tracks, where it doesn't have the gimbal, but it's using software to kind of track you as you move around, zoom in, zoom out. So again, a little pricey if you're doing it in your office. For a home office, for a corporate office, maybe it makes a little more sense. But frankly, I love it way more than the Teams phone I was using.
For
Which I would hope so for the price.
$2,500, yeah, it's something that you would absolutely want to delight you and not annoy you and tick you off. So those are interesting. The Teams Room devices in general, I think, especially when it comes to personal usage. We had talked a little bit about this with some of the Lenovo kind of prosumer-ish speakers and things that were out there, and the big limitation with those, I think, is just lack of support. So Teams as a service continues to grow, ever expanding features, functionality, API surface. So if you don't have an extendable platform that you're using, or you're not working with a vendor who's come up with some type of overall migration strategy, right? You don't want to be like that old Teams Room device that was built on the Android platform and the device itself is stuck on Android 8 when Microsoft has wholly removed support for Android 8 clients, and they've moved on and said, okay, here's the new bar. And the bar is always moving, which is fine, right? But I think for the amount of money you spend on these things, like, you do want some measure of support, to a guarantee maybe of like feature updates over N years to help you justify the cost. Like, somebody comes in and leases a bunch of these, and then you want to, take the hit on a lease over time. You want to make sure that it's at least going to work for the duration of it, kind of thing.
Yeah, I agree. And it'll be, to this point, Neat's been around for a few years now. They have not ever released upgraded hardware. The hardware they've built in has been able to be continually upgraded. But to your point, it will be interesting to see how long it keeps going before, kind of like iOS. iOS eventually stops supporting certain chips with the new software. And Android will do the same thing. They discontinue phones, hardware, all of that. Is eventually, when will these devices be able to stop being updated to the latest Android version, iOS version, whatever that may be?
Gotcha. Okay. Well, we'll have to maybe check in again and see how it's going in a few months. If you've enjoyed having a massive Teams Room device eating up some space on your desk, because it looks like they do eat up a bit of space too.
Takes up some room.
Even in their renders, it takes up some space. So, yeah.
It is not a small device. I had to do some slight desk rearranging to fit it in, so it sits like between my monitor and my camera over here now.
Gotcha. Okay. Nifty.
Yeah. More Teams fun. So do you have news, or do you want me to keep going? I can keep staying in this Microsoft 365 space with news today.
Yeah, sure. Let's stick in the M365 space. Tell me a little bit more about what you got going on.
Scott, Yammer is finally dead-ish.
All hail Viva Engage? Is that right?
Yes, the official announcement, I think it was Tuesday of this week, was that Viva Engage is the new Yammer. Yammer in name is going away, and it's now Engage, powered by Yammer services. So, yeah, that's it. Engage is the future of Yammer.
Engage, powered by Yammer services. Yammer, the acquisition that just won't die, is kind of the way I refer to it. Yeah, I don't know about this one. I still use Yammer for some things, funny enough. Yeah, I wouldn't say like I actively use it, or I don't think about it for net new initiatives, but there are places where it's used, particularly with existing communities, I think, a whole bunch. So we have some communities where we've done external Yammer networks so that we can bring in guests for some NDA-driven content, things like that. And certainly there's internal communities kicking around, like internal Yammer groups and things like that. The content always seems to seems to stay the same, while the what is it? While the look and feel kind of always continues to evolve. And I think that's been, potentially pressured by some of the integrations with Teams and some of the other space that's out there.
Yeah, I agree. And I'm still part of a few Yammer communities as well. Same as you, I don't pay a ton of attention to them. There were also some Yammer communities that I was in that have slowly worked their way over to Teams, and I think that's still a little bit of the complication I still see with this is there's still a little bit of that, why do I use Engage versus a Teams team? And I feel like Microsoft still tries to work that out. Again, because it's Yammer under the covers, Yammer supports larger groups. And some of the things that they still say is Yammer is not as much of a... They try to treat it as more of like a corporate bulletin board forum type scenario.
Very much
where
so.
Teams is a little bit more the collaborative. Yammer, or now Viva Engage, is you can go ask questions, you can do like Q&A in it, you can do announcements and praise. There's some overlap there, but it is a little bit more, this is community focused, Teams is collaboration focused, is how I would that's how I would explain Microsoft's differentiation of them in a nutshell.
I wonder, have you heard anything, does this change or accelerate plans around things like capabilities around external networks? So I like I said, there's a few places I still use these in, maybe not day to day, but at least like weekly interaction kinds of things. I had seen previously that they were going to not allow new external networks. So like, all right, that all makes sense. But it wasn't very clear to me what happened to existing ones. Are you familiar with that one at all?
I am not familiar with that one. That would be, I was just looking through some of this. And again, part of it is I just haven't followed Yammer that much because I don't have any clients using it. I've never had much of a need for it. I don't know what's going on with external networks at this point.
I think there's a couple things. So back in October, they announced that, you know how you can also do the multiple Yammer network within a single tenant? So that stuff is not supported anymore either. It's just never been, like I said, clear to me, like how all this automated consolidation, lack of automated consolidation actually comes together at the end of the day, and how it impacts existing communities, I guess, existing networks, communities, whatever we're calling them these days.
I just looked, so they still have in the documentation for Yammer, they do still have the how to create an external network, how to manage an external network, and they don't have any bullets on there around it actually going away, which I feel like usually they do in the documentation. I will say not always. This documentation hasn't been updated in almost a year around external networks. But they do have a note on here that says, the feature is not available for Yammer enterprise networks in the EU geo. So external networks are gone in the European geo, but it appears they're still alive and well in the US. I have not tried to go create one. It would be interesting if I could go create one in my tenant. Work with Azure Active Directory B2B guests in the Yammer communities. And I guess that's the other thing. At what point in time is it an external network versus just a B2B community where you're inviting those guest users in? I think that's what defines an external network. because at this point in time, I do know, I think they're 100% tied now to Microsoft 365 groups. I think that feature has been completely rolled out where it is, because you used to be able to have it completely separate from
Yeah, it was its own entity.
M365. Yeah. But there were some other announcements with it too that I'll have to keep an eye on. So there's also the new, that was introducing Viva Engage. Another announcement with it was the new Viva Engage Admin Center. So they're going to be rolling out some new admin center capabilities with it, permissions around assigning people different admin rights or different roles within Viva as a whole or within Viva Engage. And this is what happens when I click around in links. I lost my link to it. I had it at one point in time. I think I sent it to you. So it's, and this is a transition, right? It's not like Tuesday they just rebranded everything. I think it's going to take place over the rest of this year, where they're going to be slowly rebranding everything from Yammer to Viva Engage.
Bring it on, I guess. I don't even know anymore at this point.
I'm with you. I don't know. I've never been a huge fan of Yammer. I don't know that I like this direction. I think realistically, I would prefer them to merge Teams conversations and Viva Engage together, so you don't have this, what do I choose where, or some of this redundancy in how it feels. It's like, let's have one community platform. It can be Viva Engage. It can be Teams. Frankly, I think Teams makes more sense, and you roll this functionality into that. I don't know. My 2 cents. I would like to see Viva Engage, Yammer just go away and everything be part of Teams. I don't know how that works with large communities, though. And I think that's where maybe Microsoft gets hung up, because Yammer was its own entity. I mean, there were Yammer communities that had upwards of 100,000 people in them, I believe. And Teams is nowhere close to supporting that in terms of membership. So do you just go tell enterprises that had massive Yammer communities that you don't get them anymore? Do you increase your Teams member limits? You can do some sort of migration. I mean, you get kind of stuck there.
Yeah. Do more with less.
Just do more with less.
Yeah, let less users bring it. I would think like you have to address those things over time for parity. I don't know. We'll see. It clearly hasn't gotten there yet. And it's been a slow roll for, I think, in general, increasing limits in Teams when it comes to things like group membership, or I guess Teams or Office 365 groups, and all that functionality that rolls together.
Yeah, I don't even know. How long have they had Yammer?
How long have they had Yammer? Yammer was a 2012 acquisition, so 10 years of Yammer. Plus.
Wow. So, like the exact same time Office 365 predated Teams. Teams was after that, wasn't it?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's been kicking around out there for a while, so I don't know. We'll see how the Viva Engage stuff goes. I got one for you. Speaking of communities, so I know that some of the tooling that we work with day to day can be frustrating to work with, just in the ever-changing landscape and things that break, or you want to know what's going on maybe on the roadmap side. You could be an individual at an organization, could be a partner, things like that. Did you see that the OneDrive team is going to start doing open office hours?
No. Well, maybe. I don't remember. How's that for bad? Sometimes I see things and I don't remember if I saw them or not.
Fair enough. Okay. So for this one, it is going to be on Wednesdays. So the third Wednesday of each month from 8 a.m. to 9 a.m. PST. So what would that be? That would be 11 a.m. Eastern, 5 p.m. CET. The product group and engineering teams, so think like PM and developers, are going to be hosting monthly customer office hours. This is available to commercial and education customers and partners. It's an opportunity for all of us as admins to jump into a 1-hour Teams meeting. You can ask questions, share feedback. They should have updates on features that are being released in the near future, overall roadmap, all those kinds of things. So the intent is basically to run through roadmap for 5 to 10 minutes, do feedback for another 5 to 10 minutes, and then spend the majority of the time on Q&A. So folks can go and sign up for that now if they're interested. There's a form out there. So I'll put a link to the blog post in the show notes for everybody. Just give me your name, job title, work email, all those kinds of things. It's all pretty straightforward stuff. And should you be approved, you will be invited to office hours with the engineering team. So I think that stuff's always really good, having the opportunity to connect with engineering on an ongoing basis, especially outside of Build or Ignite or the big conferences or things like that.
Yeah, so is this... It's not clear. I'm assuming it's both, like OneDrive for business from the web app perspective or OneDrive from the sync client perspective. My assumption would be both since they don't call it out, but I've had several customers confused about that. Like, they start talking about OneDrive to sync all their team files, but then they get 1 terabyte of OneDrive space. And I'm like, wait a minute, we're crossing the OneDrive streams here. There's 2 different OneDrive things that are out there.
Yeah, so just going by the documentation that was provided and how to sign up and all that, it is any and all OneDrive related questions. And that's what it is. So there we go.
So
bring them on.
About community and interacting with product teams, did you see this other article here from the security and compliance and identity team, how Microsoft Security wants to help you take your fandom and turn it into global influence?
I did not see this one.
So this one was an interesting path, I guess, where you can go essentially sign up for this private community. If our users feel like they have a strong foundation and want to start influencing product development, they should join our private community or customer connection programs. It is an NDA-only community where you can come together and provide insight. And apparently, as you participate now in this community, you can earn recognition credits, which turn into a badge recognition system. And through this, you can grow from just being a part of this NDA community to getting into private previews and having one-on-one calls with the product team and working on design exercises or focus groups. And they have a whole path here of going from a member to a product champion to an influencer to a rock star to a product specific influencer to a product specific black belt to a Microsoft security influencer. And kind of different steps you can take along this whole path to provide input into the Microsoft security ecosystem.
Huh. Yeah, so this actually looks very similar, at least kind of from the front end. on what I was talking about with some of those external Yammer communities before. So totally an opportunity for us to bring customers in, chat in kind of a safe space under NDA, give access to roadmap, ask questions, all that good kind of stuff. So arguably, should you be working in a product space that you're like actively using, it's probably way more helpful to join the NDA communities if there is one, because there's just more that you can share on the roadmap side of things that won't be shared in a public community. So like you're weighing these out, right? And you're trying to think like, hey, I use OneDrive and I use, Defender 365, and I want to join that customer community program. I think arguably there's more value in seeing if you can get into the customer community program, because one is probably like, sorry, but the public stuff's probably a little fluffy, right? It's not going to go beyond what's on the public roadmap or things like that.
Yeah, this is going to give you a lot more details. And Scott, if we get into this and work our way up, we can even host a Microsoft engineer on our podcast or be hosted on one of their own.
Gee, I wonder if I had the ability to do that without joining the customer community program. Maybe not. I don't know. It depends on what my cache is, I guess.
But no, it is. If you're trying to build connections, if you want to try to get some exposure to the product team, this is a great way to do it, because they do say as you build your way up, as you grow in this part of this community, you could arrange one-on-ones with their team, post a blog on tech community, and it does mention host engineers on the podcast, be hosted on one of our own, or even the ability to co-host a webinar video with our team and be nominated for the Microsoft MVP program.
There you go.
So,
ooh, you know what? That's a decent segue. We actually have an MVP in our midst, and we never told anybody.
We do. I thought about this. So it feels weird to just tell people. But yes, Scott, after several years, as of January, I think it actually went out on January 2. I can't remember. I actually was awarded the Microsoft MVP for apps and services. So we have talked about this on and off for a very extensive period of time. So yeah, I was happy. I was excited. Should I say humbled and honored? I try to avoid humbled and honored. I was ecstatic and excited to actually be awarded the MVP. So it's exciting. It's been a fun opportunity. And being able to be a part of different things related to the MVP community. It's been a great experience so far for the last month or two. Still learning lots, but it's been fun.
Well, very good. It is definitely something that you deserve some congratulations for. I certainly see all the work that you put in on the back end to your many public community efforts. So I'm happy to see that you made it there. Like I said, congratulations. And yeah, we'll have to see if we can leverage it a little bit, huh?
Yes, we will. And thanks. And there is not even MVP related, but there are some opportunities that I have been talking to some people about that we might be able to discuss, take advantage of, talk about in the future. Nothing that's NDA yet, but it is not my place to make said conversations public as of yet.
Fair enough.
But some stuff coming we will be able to talk about here later this year. And yeah, thanks. I do appreciate it. And Scott, if you ever join the private world again, apart from Microsoft, I can now nominate you.
Yeah, maybe. I don't know. Yeah. I too have been through my adventures with the MVP program, so or at least trying to get in or trying not to get in.
It is an adventure, to say the least.
Very, 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 very much so. So, all right, very cool stuff there. What else do we got?
Are we going to keep going today? there was something else I had. Oh, so we can talk about this one briefly. We don't have to get into too many details, but I saw this one pop up, and I think it's something that people might want to start planning for. Is Microsoft is retiring Azure Automation Run As accounts in September of 2023. So 7 months from now, 6 or 7 months from now, those Run As accounts in Azure Automation are going away in favor of managed identities. So if you have been writing a bunch of runbooks, if you have been leveraging these Run As accounts, you might want to start earlier rather than later, converting these scripts over, converting these runbooks over, and getting these set up to leverage managed identities instead, so that you don't get caught off guard at the end of September, September 30 of 2023.
Yeah, I went back, I tried to find an Azure update post or something about it, and I didn't see anything there, which is kind of weird. Ideally, that'd be the way these are communicated outside of technical documentation or anything like that. But if you're using them, it's time to go convert to MIs and get them out of the way.
Yep.
I think it'd be nice to have them gone, though.
Benefits to them. It would be. Like, there is, and I couldn't find it. I thought I saw a blog post that popped up in this last week, too, about the security vulnerabilities related to Run As accounts and the advantages of managed identity versus Run As accounts, just from a pure security perspective. And if you do go back, there was a vulnerability like 10 or 11 months ago related to Run As accounts. So having these gone and having them converted over to the managed identities is definitely a good thing from a security standpoint, from a functionality. And most of the modules now that I've used, the Exchange modules, again, coming at these, I use these so much for Microsoft 365 Exchange modules, PNP, Microsoft Graph. All of those now support managed identity authentication if you're using a runbook. Remind me, Scott, you can absolutely put this on this list. We should talk about my fiasco with a PowerShell script in Azure Automation related to Microsoft Teams reporting. We'll talk about this next week, because this was a pound my head against the desk, feels like a hack type of workaround, to the point I had like 50 different browser tabs open as I was sorting through how to get this to work. And it has to do with managed identities and app principles and certain functions in some of these PowerShell modules.
Gotcha. Well, yeah, we're kind of at time for this week, so we'll definitely have to dive into it next week. Yeah.
So that is something to be aware of. I don't think I have anything else. I think that was the big ones I had flagged for this week. Do you have anything else you wanted to wrap up with that I'm missing?
Ooh, I will close out. We talked about, the question of how we do work task management, like individual task management stuff a couple of weeks ago. And yes, I went out and tried Jira work management on the suggestion of you and some others. And while it's Jira, and Jira is Jira, and it has all its own issues of being Jira, it's actually fairly adaptable and does all the things that I wanted it to do, short of having actual issue hierarchies within it. So there's some third-party, I guess, marketplace plugins, apps, things like that can help out with that. And the nifty thing is, if you're less than 10 users, Jira Work Management is free. So it looks like the pricing for those marketplace apps is free as well. Like, it doesn't kick into the monthly cost until you cross the threshold of 11 users. So I'm finding it to be fairly adaptable, fairly flexible, and with the addition of a couple of add-ins. So there's a Jira issue hierarchy add-in, which actually lets you have a hierarchy of N issues. So you can go from an epic to a story to a task to a subtask versus just an epic to a task and not having any insight into your subtasks until you click down on it, kind of thing, anything like that. And there's also a really cool calendaring roadmap plugin, which while I'm not doing software development, like I'm just doing basic task management, it's really good to have, at least based on like an end date kind of thing, a Gantt chart to get me all the way across to say, hey, here's what's happening in the next 1 week, 2 weeks, 3 weeks kind of thing. So Jira Work Management has been a surprise to me. Yeah, it actually works.
Nice. I'm glad to hear it. I'm glad to hear you're enjoying it after recommending it, because there's nothing worse than recommending it and having you hate it. Makes me feel bad.
Well,
I cry myself to sleep.
we don't want that at all. On that note, we'll let you go and not cry a little bit and celebrate that you've done a good thing.
All right. Well, thanks, Scott. Go enjoy your weekend. Great talking to you again, and we will talk to you next week.
Great. Thanks, Ben.